So I haven't done a graphic novel review for a while, but I saw that there was some Cyberpunk 2077 material out there by Dark Horse Comics, including the ongoing runs of Blackout and You Have My Word, that I'll review when their runs end. In this video, I'm going to run through Your Voice, Trauma Team, Big City Dreams, and Where's Johnny? But before we do, make sure you get a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already, especially if you like sci-fi and fantasy, and I've been doing quite a bit of adult animation type stuff lately. Not like that though. So these novels are definitely expanding the universe rather than forwarding or continuing any kind of story, but I feel that's what Cyberpunk is. It's this main story thread, and most of it is made up of other, smaller facets of the universe, all kind of bolted on. But as expansions, these are great if you really like the mood and setting, and then you can stick on some of the Cyberpunk soundtrack while you read these, and and if you don't expect too much from them, you're gonna love them. Like Edgerunners, they're standalone stories set in Night City, sometimes very loosely connected to existing events, sometimes not at all. And they seem to be scattered, taking place at different points in the timeline. I started with Trauma Team, which actually surprised me by how good it was, at least in terms of a short, self-contained story. What I mean by that is that there's not a whole lot of time to orient yourself in the world, get to know and like the characters, etc. It's a simple enough story that revolves around... It's a simple enough story that looks at the paramedic side of Night City, which is a really weird job because as a paramedic, you're there to help your client even if they're the worst kind of scum villain. The clients are prioritized by what insurance policy they have, so of course the more money you have, the more chance you have of surviving. Go figure. These sci-fi writers and their dystopian societies. Oh no, I'm depressed. These guys are part doctor, part SWAT team who go in armed up to the teeth because chances are they're going into a live fire situation, and if they have to kill to get the client out of there, well, that's just part of the remit. That's what they're doing. Can you imagine being an ambulance driver and then a call comes in and it's like, oh, somebody's auntie has thrown their hip out. Get the shotgun, we're going in. And your ambulance has got Gatling guns on it and... Trauma Team centers on Nadia, whose team is wiped out on a call by a cyber psycho. Although technically, I guess he's not a cyber psycho because he hasn't actually lost his mind. Like, he's still got his shit together, you know what I mean? He's just like a murderous, rampaging psycho. Reasons that are his own, I guess. We all have bad days, right? Leaving her as the lone survivor. When she finally gets back in the saddle, her first call is to help, yeah, you guessed it, the very same cyber psycho that killed her team. From there, it settles into a dread type thing where she has to get this guy she hates out of this massive building full of other bad guys who want him dead. And there aren't really many surprises here, but it is quite well done. The main question being, if it came to it, do you save the person you love, or do you do your job and put the client first? The bit I thought was most interesting was when Nadia stops to help a little girl who is sick, like a bystander in the middle of all this situation, and her team members tell her to prioritize the mission, but the cyber psycho, without going into all the details here, actually helps her with the kid. So like I said, solid. Great artwork, decent characters, decent storyline. Above average for me because it explores a corner of Night City that always fascinated me, and I always quite like the blurring of the moral lines that I was talking about. Anyway, moving on to Your Voice, this one has artwork that I love. It's really stylized, and it's somehow simplified and detailed all at the same time. It's about a rail maintenance worker called Todd who lives this kind of solitary life, it feels like, until he happens to stumble into the middle of this situation where this beautiful girl is on the run from a gang called Maelstrom. She hands him a chip before running away. To track her down, he visits a fixer, but in return for his help, the fixer wants a favor. I mean, were you expecting anything else? Like, this is how things work in Night City. So Todd has to test this experimental piece of cyberware called an amygdala stimulator, which is supposed to help the user make quicker decisions. And from here, it kind of becomes altered, where the guy has a chip put in him, which has, gives him a voice in his head and the ability to do martial arts and stuff. No martial arts here, though, but, voice in the head and quicker decisions. There you go. Still an upgrade, right? So with this one, I did feel like the story could have been stronger, but it earns a lot of brownie points because of the atmosphere it manages to convey through this stunning artwork. Like, look at this. And because of that, I really enjoyed this one. As I said, I put on some of the Cyberpunk soundtrack, and so it really immersed me in that world. But yeah, it's a shame that the story was a little bit too complicated for its own good. This one chugs along nicely until it gets a little bit muddled in the middle and then kind of goes off in a strange direction, which I wasn't crazy about. No such problem with the next one though, because Big City Dreams It's a lot simpler of a story. It had moments that I really liked, but I was pretty let down by the ending on this one. This novel is almost two stories in one, the main one following these two petty criminal kids, one of which is desperate to make it as a big-time criminal, the other one who doesn't really feel cut out for it. He isn't comfortable with the random violence, so he uses brain dances to get a break from it all. There's a really cool BD sequence where he takes on the role of this guy called Annihilator, I think his name is, but even this is too much for him. So the BD guy offers him something more sedate. So he goes into the experiences of this guy, a farmer who lived a life out in the wastelands and tried raising a family before the country life and the pull of the city led to his wife and daughter leaving him. Our guy becomes obsessed with finding the farmer, and then he does, and that's pretty much it. That's where it ends, with our guy finally finding the simplicity and quieter life that he'd been yearning for. This one chalks up as kinda average for me, just because of the abruptness of the ending. It just sort of stops. The worst one so far was Where's Johnny, which follows a corporation-hating journalist who's given the task of finding a certain Johnny Silverhand's dead body for an ex-musician called Queen Stetson, so she can add Johnny's famous silver hand to her collection of musical relics. It's kind of a film noir, private eye type affair with twists and turns, and ultimately leads somewhere quite different to where you think it's gonna go. The whole thing here hinges on the fact that after Silverhand blew up Arasaka Towers, Arasaka managed to cover up the fact that it was a terrorist act. I guess because they're afraid of him becoming some kind of martyr. So this journalist becomes hell-bent on bringing the truth out, but the entire story sort of morphs into something else completely again. And I don't know, again, it's kind of muddled, this one, and I didn't particularly care for it. I didn't particularly care about any of the characters, and yeah, this one wasn't the best for me. Now, let me just throw in a quick spoiler warning right here, because I want to talk about this, because I don't want to ruin it for anyone who does want to read these. But basically, where it really disappointed me was that halfway through, this reporter/detective realizes that he's not been on the trail of Johnny Silverhand at all, which to me is like the story equivalent of grabbing a small plant, pulling it out of the ground, chopping the roots off, and then shoving it back in the ground and expecting it to grow. And once you've removed Johnny Silverhand from the equation, it's like, why should I care about this now? The artwork is okay in this one, not spectacular though, so yeah, distinctly average this one. Looking back at all of them so far, the interesting thing about these novels is that the body modification, the most interesting aspect of all of Cyberpunk to me, isn't really an element that they play on very much. Like, there are characters who have body mods, there is a Ripperdoc here and there, but really the fact that you can have extendable arms, a 10 terabyte hard drive in your head, and that melding of the organic and technological, it's there, but it's not really made use of that much. So although I wouldn't rate these as a complete waste of time, they are definitely more for the hardcore fans who want to know absolutely everything they possibly can about the universe. The casual fans can probably give these a pass. Anyway guys, let's leave that there for now. Like I said, I'll do a review of Blackout and, hold on, what was the other one called? Of Blackout and You Have My Word when their run's finished, so make sure you stay tuned to the channel for that. And until then, let me invite you to get out of my head, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and cheerio, bye!